hospital in Gaza killing this ass.
Gaza, have you expressed any specific concerns to Israel on that, sir?
Well, you know I have not been reluctant in expressing my concerns what's going on. And it's my hope and expectation that there will be less intrusive action relative to the hospital. We're in contact and we're with the Israelis. The hospital must be protected.
The hospital must be protected, referring to hospitals in the Gaza Strip that have faced aerial bombardments by the IDF at the direction, of course, of the Israeli government. Interesting how the person filming that whole interaction somehow decided it was a good idea to switch over to a shot of the reporter instead of the shot of our pathetic looking president. But it's not just pathetic looking. Biden can also be pathetic in how he literally tried to backtrack or backpedal a very mild statement about how hospitals should be protected in the Gaza Strip. So after that, he had John Kirby come out and say, well, what Biden really meant. So let's give you all of that. So Biden added that there is an effort to take this pause to deal with the release of prisoners, and that's being negotiated as well. And the Qataris are engaged, so I remain somewhat hopeful, but the hospitals must be protected. That was the entirety of the statement. Later, though, it was immediately walked back by John Kirby, the National Security Council's coordinator for strategic communications. Biden was referring to this extra burden that faces the IDF as they go into Gaza, because Hamas does shelter themselves behind civilian infrastructure, said John Kirby. This includes places like hospitals, schools, or tunnels under residential buildings, he said. It makes it much harder for any military force to go after those targets because the hospital itself ought to be, as the president said, ought to be protected. So he's really talking about this incredibly difficult conundrum that Israeli military forces are facing right now. It doesn't really seem like the IDF finds it to be a difficult conundrum at all. They just bomb the hospital. They've done it over and over again, and they will continue to do it over and over again with the cover provided by the United States government. Cenk, any thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts. So we shared with you guys yesterday that the IDF soldiers were shooting people coming out of the hospital. How do they know if they're civilians or Hamas? They don't. And then reports were that civilian bodies were piling up in front of the hospital. And so, and the main problem with the hospital, by the way, in this case, is cutting off the water and power. So as we told you yesterday, 3 babies have already died because they were taken off because the incubator ran out of power. Over 30 people have already died at the hospital for similar reasons. So how do you do it? Well, they always say like, oh, Hamas is using human shields, so there's nothing we can do. No, the first part of this sentence is interesting and debatable. The second part of the sentence is not debatable. Of course, there's something else you can do. So one way is much more dangerous for the IDF soldiers, I get it, but you can go inside the tunnels where Hamas is. And I know that it's very difficult and I'm sure it's booby trapped, etc. But if you gave me 2 options, show courage, go inside the tunnels, try to get the bad guys and rescue the hostages, or bomb on top of the tunnels, do absolutely no good and kill civilians, I think that's a super easy answer. The IDF, of course, has gotten to the opposite conclusion. No, shoot, bomb, cut off the electricity, etc., to the hospital, and don't go in the tunnels, and then shoot whoever comes out. Okay, and they're not always shooting everybody who comes out, right? But they've shot a lot of people who've come out. And so,
can I give you an example of what Human Rights Watch reported today in regard to people they shoot at and kill? So Kenneth Roth from Human Rights Watch had tweeted the following. The Israeli army said it had targeted a suspicious vehicle containing several terrorists. The only people in the car were 3 girls, ages 14, 12, and 10, their grandmother and their mother. All were killed, except for their mother.
Yeah, so look, anyone who takes the IDF seriously is hilarious. I mean, quoting them as if it's their, like a news organization, no, they're work for government, they're the military arm of that government, they're the one committing war crimes right now. They have the worst track record of almost any military in the world in terms of being honest. I'm not saying in terms of killing civilians, the Russians have killed tons of civilians, although I'm not sure they've killed as many as Israel. We'll have to look that up. And so there are a lot of terrible governments in the world. I'm not saying Israel's the worst of them by a long shot. North Korea is awful. Uyghurs have, the Chinese have the Uyghurs in concentration camps, etc. But in terms of lying, the IDF is right up at the top. I mean, those 5 innocent women were all terrorists. They're a joke. They're a sick, sick joke in terms of the overwhelming propaganda they put out. But I want to go back to Biden for 1 second. So there's 3 problems there, the good, the bad, and the ugly, or 3 things. One is, does Biden still have a grasp of the issues? And I'm kind of relieved that he does. So he talks about it in a way that at least gives you a sense that he understands the issues at hand. Like when Trump talks about it, it's like, them bad, them here, we attack. Like you're like, okay, so he doesn't understand anything, just a buffoon. Why don't you just squirt water out of the flower in your lapel? Just total bozo the clown. So at least Biden understands the issues, that's the good. The bad is the substance of the issues. When he says, hey, we're basically still a green light. They're trying to negotiate the release of the hostages. America's pushing in the right direction. But when it comes to the hospital, he says maybe we should back off, but then his government doesn't really believe it. So then they have to go out and correct them and say, no, we're not gonna tell Israel to back off. We're gonna tell them to keep hitting the hospital. So the substance is awful.
So is he the president of the United States? Is he the leader of the free world? Is he or not? Or is John Kirby the leader of the free world? Well, I wanna know, because I have to say, that cold open we started this segment with appears to show you an incredibly weak person who is supposed to be leading this country. Okay, so a lot of it, yes, has to do with his age, but he's being asked about the brutality that's being directed toward innocent people, patients at a hospital. Many of those patients happen to be children. We showed you videos of infants taken off of incubators because they don't have the fuel to continue running those incubators. Who knows what the fate of those infants will be, they're premature infants. He doesn't even have the strength or the courage to look that reporter in the eye. He's looking down at his papers. He's talking as slowly as humanly possible. No credit. Wow, he said the most mild, common sense thing in the world, which is hospitals should be protected.
And then he had to walk it back.
And then someone in his administration immediately walks it back.
Yeah.
Because is he in charge? I don't know. Did he really mean it, Cenk?
So that goes to the third thing. And so this is both optics and substance. So when he mumbles and looks down, it looks awfully weak. You're like, Jesus Christ, what? You have to like lean in to hear what he's saying, but it's not just the optics, guys. So there's 2 possibilities on why he said the thing about the hospital and then it was walked back. One is that sometimes as you're speaking off the cuff, you overstate something. You mean to say something positive, but you get into a policy conundrum, as Kirby would say, because you mean to give a green light to the continued massacres, but you were accidentally human for a second and it slipped out. So that's possible. The other possibility is he's a little tiny bit confused about his own administration's policies. Then they get together in a room, they hash it out, and they decide, no, guys, we decided green light on the massacres. So then they send Kirby back out to correct the president because he got a little too human for a second. Right? Now there's a huge rebellion that Anna's gonna tell you about at the State Department and all throughout the executive branch, because the fact that they have to walk back any half a sentence that he's human on is not a good sign. That's the most important underlying problem.
But before we get to that, I think it's really important to understand why people who find the actions of the IDF deplorable are saying what they're saying. Why people like me will come on this show, and despite as hard as I try to be calm and make cogent arguments without getting too emotional or too passionate, it is incredibly difficult for someone who actually gives a damn about human lives and innocent people to watch what you're about to watch and just feel passionateless, feel no passion while sharing these stories with you and talking about how our government, with our resources, continues to support the brutality and the barbarism that you're about to see. Let's take a look.
You wonder how anyone is left alive in Gaza City. Doctors in Al-Shifa Hospital are fighting to save the lives of 36 premature babies taken out of incubators that are no longer running due to a lack of fuel. 3 others died over the weekend. Children crying out in pain. Children trying to care for their mother. There are moments of relief too, even if they're tempered by suffering. Iman is meeting her daughter for the first time since the war began, after fleeing from the north. What was it like, she's asked. It's death, she replies. Slow death. Death is everywhere right now in Gaza. One by one, the body bags are brought out. 8 members of an extended family. What words of comfort can soothe this pain?
Those are bombs supplied by us, the United States of America, in a country that has an entire political party that claims that they will do anything to protect human life, even regulate the bodies of women within our borders. But their actions really do speak louder than words when you see what they are willing to protect and provide cover for in regard to the Israeli government and their military, the Israeli Defense Forces. I see those Palestinian civilians exactly the same as I see Israeli civilians. People who should live safe lives, lives of dignity, who should be protected, who should never be targeted by any political group, any terrorist group. But it really does pain me to see every single day over and over again how much certain people in this country have no problem dehumanizing the very people who are getting slaughtered in the Gaza Strip every single day. And I'm supposed to sit here and without any passion share these details with you. It's incredibly difficult because this particular issue is so shameful. It makes me feel ashamed of our government and what it is carrying out right now.
Yeah, so we all want the hostages home, right? I'm gonna do a similar plea as Anna here and trying to see people as human beings. So those hostages are human beings, and every time I think about them in a tunnel somewhere, a mom, there's some kids, anyone, I feel heartbroken over it, and we got to try to get them home as soon as possible, and Hamas should obviously release them, right? So, and they're working on negotiations right now. But when you see the Palestinians that are killed, they're also human. And so when now American media is treating it 50-50, which is amazing. My whole life, they've never been treated as human. And anytime Palestinians are killed or Muslims are killed, America just says, they're all terrorists anyway. It's deeply racist, and it's happened thousands of times in my lifetime. Again, getting better now. But guys, also about the prisoners. So when they're trying to release the hostages, they're negotiating over prisoners that Israel has that no one talks about. So Israel takes some prisoners based on evidence that they have. Oh, that guy's part of Hamas. This is before the October 7th attack, right? As they do normal security, and they have some evidence, and they try those folks, etc. And then they take a whole bunch of prisoners that they have no evidence on.
And there's no charges against them.
There's no charges, there's no nothing. It's extrajudicial, it's totally illegal. And by the way, that also includes women and children. So Israel has taken hostages for decades. They continually take Palestinian hostages, but since it's a government doing it and it's an ally doing it, that doesn't count as hostages. Well, I'm sorry, but they are hostages. They're the children and the women that you took without any charges at all. So what? And basically now Hamas is saying, all right, let's do a hostage exchange. Your hostages for my hostages. And so anyone who says that's not fair is being ridiculous. What? So it's the Israeli hostages matter, and they definitely do. But the Palestinian hostages don't matter? Why? Because all Palestinians are terrorists, right? I mean, look, I just understand the underlying racism of constantly treating the Palestinians as if they're not human. And then the last set of prisoners that Israel is holding is, I don't know, all of the Palestinians, the millions and millions of Palestinians that they occupy in open air prisons. So when are we gonna let those prisoners go? So look, this isn't just about Israel, this is about America. America keeps sending money, and now we're going to spend another $14 billion to keep millions of Palestinians as the prisoners of the Israelis. It is unconscionable, it is immoral, and anytime Israel is aggrieved, in this case rightfully, sometimes not rightfully, they go in and kill anyone they like. And so don't tell me they're targeting anyone when they've got over 11,000 civilians dead, and they're too scared to go in the tunnels. I get why, but But be honest about it. You're too scared to actually fight Hamas in the tunnels, so you're killing civilians above the tunnels instead. Be honest about what you're doing. Don't give me this crap about, oh, I meant to kill 2 Hamas guys. I accidentally killed 11,000 civilians. So when you've killed 10 times as many civilians as Hamas, sorry, but I don't want to send you any more money for killing more civilians. The American taxpayer has no business basically financing massacres.
But we have no choice. Both political parties support what's happening. Both political parties will provide cover for what's happening. Both political parties, with zero debate, will funnel more and more billions and billions of dollars to the Israeli government, regardless of what it does. That is the reality of our political climate, our political situation, and our so-called allyship with the Israeli government, which doesn't really respect the lives of Palestinian civilians at all, and has the United States basically helping them in carrying out their brutality toward those Palestinians, while potentially expanding this war into a broader regional war with other countries, including Lebanon, Iran, Syria, Iraq. It's gonna be a disaster if that happens. And I hope it doesn't devolve into that situation, but that is the area that we're headed in as we speak.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.